So, I mean, as we talk about Passover and all the symbolism surrounding it, I mean, there's so much. There's so much. So, again, we were just talking about, the bread and the wine, but how, the meal was really that. It was a meal. There was a lot more than just bread and wine. But they started with the bread and they started with the bitters that weren't probably the best taste, right?
Right.
I mean, it's bitters mixed with bread. Probably not fantastic.
And vegetables like lettuce and stuff like that. It's like a
That
P.F.
is
Chang's
my
lettuce wrap
favorite.
I'm so
without any of the
excited.
good
I'm
stuff.
like, where's the good stuff at? Yeah.
Right, but all the good stuff came at the end, right? So I feel like there's semblance there. There's just a lot.
Where you headed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ariel, I think you had a part that you liked
Yeah.
the most in that.
The blood on the post. Like, I've heard this story
Right.
multiple times, but I never really, I guess, dug into it because I was kind of taught like this was just like a Jewish tradition.
Well, you said never dug into it. I don't feel like it was ever broken down for me
Yeah.
where there was that much
True.
symbolism behind it. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, my little brain, it just doesn't,
Yeah.
it's not going to think all that through. So this is really enlightening to me, but
Yeah, and just hearing about the blood post and how like it was on top and on the sides, and now seeing it
Yeah.
as God on the cross, Jesus on the
Cross,
cross,
yeah.
it was just like, okay, like now this is making sense. Now it's starting. The puzzle pieces are now starting to fit, and it was just like,
Right.
at that moment.
And we just literally did the broad strokes of the symbolism. There's
Right.
so much more depth, and people have done tons of writings on this. I mean, this is a core piece of studying of all of that. And just to see that foreshadowed for 1,500 years,
Yeah, so another part that really stood out was actually the ritual aspect, because it was a memorial, not just like, oh, I remember that, but it was something they do and they move forward and they do every year.
right.
So that stood out because I think we did communion once a quarter growing up, and
Yeah.
it was a sacred thing, but it wasn't something that I looked at as we need to do this as a ritual. So
I feel like the Passover event in general, that'd have been pretty hard to forget, wouldn't it? I mean, because of
if
the
you
people,
read the whole thing,
right. I mean, the people that didn't mark their door with the blood, I'm just saying they'd never
That was
forget.
a major event. That was a major event.
Major
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
well, and I think that's kind of the idea is like, but even major events we can forget.
that's true.
That's true.
We are the species with amnesia all the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're right.
I use, again, this is all called a relationship with Christ and with God. So, like, I think use the best relationship I know of, which is, my relationship with my wife.
Right.
And I sit and think, well, my people's wedding days are big marker events in their life,
Yeah.
but they forget the love that they once had. They quote unquote grow apart. No, you didn't grow apart. You had a rhythm in your life that you did. I mean, what you used to, I'm a man, so I'm talking from the man side, right? Like, you used to court her, you used to plan dates, you used to do all of those things that it did to get her. It will take to keep her. But it's not this idea of I got to earn her love and affection. I've actually already got it, and it's the rhythm. And so when people are like, I just grew apart, no, you didn't. You actively did not keep your rhythm and your ritual. I mean, even in our modern day, though, when you say the word ritual, people are like, ooh, they either go weird with it and they're like, cultish, whatever, or they think, oh, religion.
Yeah.
And we always think of a repetitious mindful act means there's no meaning or heart behind it. No.
Right.
I can, I eat every single day.
Yes.
And there's a lot of heart behind me eating. There's meaning behind it. I know I want to, and so you can't just chalk up anything to say because you do it frequently or repeat it, and you have to think about it and choose to do it, that it's not important, and that makes it somehow not true and not meaningful. You know what? I mean, drinking water. I have to remind myself to drink water, not Dr. Pepper, not Coke, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have to actively choose to
Did you
do it.
drink water today? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I can't say, well, like, you don't have to drink water all the time, and if you do, there's no point to it. It's not truly doing anything because you're doing it all the time. Like, this is, again, most people be like, those are weird analogies. They don't even make sense. Like, actually, they're the best analogies because it seems so ludicrous.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the way we should think, to me, about ritual things. Again, not mindless, not just I do the thing checkbox idea. More the idea of a ritual like the remembering, like the memorial that Exodus 12 talks about, and Luke, when we were reading in Luke, it says, in remembrance, in this idea that I call to mind the event or the person, but then I act on their behalf, and in doing it, I recreate it again to make it present again, and to redo the entire thing.
Well, but okay, so I'm just sitting here thinking as you're talking. But we don't do it the same way now as what they did at that time, right? Because if I think about it again, and I know we mentioned this earlier, but now it's like you get a wafer or you get a little square of bread and you get juice or wine and take your little sip and that's it.
Dink it and sink it, Jesus.
Right, but I mean,
Shot glass, Jesus, we're done.
At that time, it was a whole meal and it was time for you to sit together and talk and like share, I don't know, the goodness of Christ together, right? That's supposed to be the remembrance, I guess, in the way that I'm taking it.
And that's kind of that after this Last Supper that happens in Luke, after that time, in the first century during Jesus' time, that is the forward movement of the church right there, is this what we call communion. And it did shift its kind of paradigm, if you will. The way it worked, it shifted a lot.
Right.
But for 1,500 years leading up to Christ, it was all centered around Passover.
Okay.
Once a year idea, and then indeed it kind of added some things to it as time went on. They kind of added some more symbolism. They never removed what was happening up to the time of Christ, right? Even Passover celebrated now, but they don't go get lambs and cut them and they don't do any of that anymore. It's shifted drastically after the time of Jesus, which is just a fun, interesting point. Like, why not?
Right.
Like, it says forever.
It says forever.
Right.
For the Jewish people. We're not Jewish, so like that's a whole different thing. So, but why did you change it? So it's almost like there's something that tells you we don't need that anymore, right? But yet we need ritual.